doing our best to celebrate women and the contributions that women have made just throughout history. But today I wanted to talk a little bit about how that interacts with our faith, right? And so we have three amazing women that we get to be in community with. And so I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and we're just going to chat a little bit about kind of what that means for them and how does that look in the 21st century. We've talked a lot. We always hear, especially if you've grown up in church, about this idea of this Proverbs 31 woman, but I think that looks different over time. The principles might stay the same, but I think women look so different and we're so dynamic, and I think it's really always exciting to be able to see what does a woman of faith, especially young women, what does that look like in our context where we are now. So I'm going to let them, in any order they desire, to just introduce themselves, just first name, and maybe if you feel comfortable with the age, and just kind of, I don't know, maybe even the city you're coming from. We're here in Nashville, obviously you guys know that, but yeah.
I'll start. I'm Edith. I'm 21, and I live here in Nashville, but I'm from Michigan originally.
I'm Shannon. I'm 29. I'm originally from Kentucky, but I reside in Nashville.
Hey y'all, Takia, 24, and originally from Memphis, Tennessee.
Cool. So, first thing that I want to just kind of get to, how do you see, like, what role does faith, like the Christian faith, what role does your faith play in your life? And that you can answer that in any way that feels comfortable. And in any order that feels comfortable. Or I'll just go Edith. Or Takia looked ready.
I'm processing.
You're processing, so we gotta go to Edith.
I think it is, like, the first word that came to mind is it's like the constant and sort of like the rock that I build everything else off of. Of course, doesn't always stay that steady. Like, there are doubts and times where it doesn't feel as solid, but I think at the end of the day, it's the constant in my life, and it's like sometimes like the only source of peace that I have. Yeah.
The trust I have in God is where my faith resides, and I'm just grateful that I have a source to lean and depend on, and that's what gives me my strength to make it through life, make it through my days, make it through the hours. So it's just like the peace of God.
Yeah.
Still processing, but I'm in a place where I'm thinking about how do I live out my faith in the day-to-day, that it doesn't just operate between the four walls of the church, but that it like meets the work that I'm doing when I pursue justice, my academic work, how I engage with people. Most recently, when I think about my faith, and I tell my friends all the time, Black women brought me to the cross, but Black girls keep me there. Mainly just because I'm always thinking about how do I bring Jesus, that love, the principles that Jesus gives to Black girls, because they're often forgotten about. In the context of spirituality, religion, all of the above. So Black women brought me to the cross, but Black girls keep me there because I'm always asking Jesus, like, how do I live you out in the day-to-day?
That's really good. That immediately made me think of a question. What does that look like? So you all are pretty young, right? And so when you think about this next generation of like young girls coming behind you, I know like studies are showing just the way that kids view faith now. Kids, when I say kids, I literally mean like even elementary and middle school, right? The way they view faith, it's a little different than perhaps the generation before them. So like even the end of the millennial generation, like early 20s, there's a big difference between them and Gen Z. And so just wondering, is there something that you didn't encounter, or did maybe in your faith experience, that you would want to make sure the next generation gets or avoids?
I think the youth today are looking for a light in people. They are looking for that faith in just a beacon of hope that they see in a person, and that's what they're led to, that's what they're drawn to. And so it's just really important to set an example, not only just for yourself, but others, because that's what people gravitate to. They gravitate to your energy, your light. So it's just super important to let that light shine bright. And so I'm really finding that out with, you know, the youth of today. They're looking for it in people.
Yeah. That authenticity. Yeah,
I think going off that, like, you are starting to care a lot more about people's actions, and like, if you are, you know, caring about the community around you, and I think they are more aware of the problems, especially in the church. So I agree with that, like, just being the example and like living out your faith, I think is kind of the best thing you can do, because they'll watch you, and probably more than you realize.
Yeah.
I feel like you all said it. I think even if I reflect on my own experience, I think we theoretically talk about Jesus, but we don't always show how that can and should show up practically. And I think authenticity, sharing your light. I also, when I think of like a childlike faith, I think there's what's so powerful about the childlike faith is the ability to be able to inquire. And children like to ask questions, and a lot of the times they pose them, and either adults aren't vulnerable enough to say I don't know, or they shut the question down, or it's just like, you know, we don't talk about these things. And I think what's so beautiful about the childlike faith is that I'm trusting you, one, to guide me. I'm also trusting you to answer my questions. And 3, I'm trusting you to allow me to be human and make mistakes and be there with me when I fall and reorient me back into my faith. And so that doesn't always happen in church or just in faith practice in general. So
that's really good. And that's actually, what's interesting is that's an overlap with millennials and Gen Z. The studies are showing an overlap is that desire for authenticity, right? Like that need to be able to, it's funny you said ask questions, that's in there, right? When you look at even the Barna study and talking about that, there's this desire to be able to have the freedom to ask questions, which is not something you typically grow up in, being able to ask questions. When I think about that, something for younger people, but especially younger girls, I want them to see more examples of their possibility, right? Like I saw women who were preaching-ish sometimes, occasionally, right? But I think I'd love for them to see just the possibility of what does it look like for women in leadership and women kind of taking on those roles in the faith. Because I think for me, especially just in the role that I'm in now, that's something, if I had something I could give them, I'm like, I'd love for them to see more of that. What does it look like? And to do it in a healthy way. Because sometimes if we're not careful, like in anything, we can end up replicating the toxicity that we grew up in, right? And so, yeah, that would be mine. But that's really good. So just for you, we talked about just how you see that, what role it plays in your life, and what you want to see in this younger generation. Are there any difficulties that you found? So, like, times are different and the world changes, right? And so we know that it's the principle of scripture is it does stay the same. But what that has looked like from era to era to era throughout time has been very, very different. And sometimes we're scared to say how it's difficult. But I think there's just a lot of freedom that comes when we can say, like, but this part might be hard, because that is what we offer the next generation. When we say, hey, this part might be hard, but I made it, and this is, you know, how, or whatever. So is there, and if you're comfortable, no, everybody doesn't have to answer, everybody can. Are there parts of just being a young woman that's a Christian that you found difficult, or that you've overcome, and now you've figured out, like, okay, this is how I kind of got over that? I know, it's a lot to think of. Yeah.
I think one thing that's can be challenging is letting yourself be kind of in the middle and like stand in those places that you don't know all the answers to. I think especially for women, there's either like the powerful, got it all together woman who's like on top of the world, or there's like the weak and like woman who just needs guidance and doesn't know her place. But I think a lot of us are in the middle.
Right.
Of like, no, we're not weak. Like, we can stand up for ourselves. We can we're still strong, but we don't also feel on top of the world,
Yes.
and we're not like leaders in like big ways
Yeah.
that you may see. So I think just like kind of being okay with like being in that middle ground and being able to be like, I don't know all the answers.
Yeah.
Like I just don't.
I
And like
love that.
I'm not
So
even
good.
actively searching to like check off all the boxes to make sure I do. Like this is just where I am. Yeah.
That's good.
But that's a hard place to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Especially in a world of social media where
Oh,
everybody looks like they have it together and nobody's admitting that they don't, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Anybody else? I like that. Takia's like, I'm thinking through that one. Did you have a response for that one? No. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's so true. That goes back to even that offering that I would provide for that younger generation of like, here's the hint, here's the spoiler alert. You're not gonna have to have it all together, and sometimes you really won't. Sometimes you will fall to pieces, and I think we don't always give ourselves permission for that. As Christians, too, men and women perhaps, but definitely women. There's a pressure to be either or, to fit in some box, right? And I mentioned at the beginning of this, like Proverbs 31, especially, that's a box that has been created, and we did a study on that. Because that's a box that's been created and taken out of what even the scripture itself says. And so we think we're literally supposed to be down somewhere on port, like selling fabric. And I'm like, but probably not, because you don't live near a port to sell fabric. So like, and every woman is not supposed to be an entrepreneur. Some women are happy at their job as, teachers or full-time moms or nurses or whatever they are, doctors, right? They're happy at their job. That's not necessarily their thing. But I think, that the freedom, I feel like the word that just kind of sticks out to me is just wish we had a lot more freedom to kind of live out faith, a lot more freedom to express what faith is. So I'm going to give you one more thing. So this is short. This is just me wanting to get a little insight on just kind of where we are in faith. But if you had one piece of advice, because a lot of this is focusing, we're talking about Women's History Month, but I love that we took a turn into this younger generation. If you had one piece of advice, this might take a moment to think about, for you at 12-year-old you, that is like sitting in youth group and is like, what? That 12-year-old you, if you had one piece of advice you could reach back and tell her, because you know better now when it comes to your faith, what would you tell her? We can take a pause for that, but if you're ready.
I would say don't rush things. Just not just like where you need to be in life and all that, but just like enjoy the moment. Just, don't be so laser focused that you forget to stop and smell the roses. And, and also to the business, Shannon, also the glass ceiling does exist, but put your lipstick on and shatter it.
Come on. I love that. That's good. That's good. I love that. 12-year-old, yeah.
Man, I think I would just say, well, regarding faith, just like it's not going to look like anyone else's. Like, I just think about 12-year-old Edith and like going to church every week, like in Sunday school, and just not really having my own faith at all. But seeing everyone else's and knowing that even now, like, my faith doesn't look like any of those people's faith that I was in Sunday school with.
Yeah.
And that it's like fluid. Like, it's always going to be changing. You're always going to be learning new things, and to find comfort in that. Like, if you don't like where you are now, like, you're not going to stay there no matter how hard you try. Like, you can't stay the same person forever. Hopefully you'll keep getting better and growing. But yeah, just to allow your faith to move with you. Yeah.
That's good.
These are all good things for my 12-year-old to like
hear.
I don't know. I think, and I think it's something that I'm still unlearning, actually. But I think that I know God was taught to me in these very very specific ways. And even in the Bible study, I can't remember her name when she was talking about God and how she learned, or she maneuvered herself in a way of like, oh, I don't want to be out of the will of God. And so like everything she did was like, oh, it's God. Like everything was like, I don't know how, like, I think that was always in the back of my mind. But I also was a rebel, so I was like, we just gonna, try it out and just see how it goes still. But it never worked out well. And so maybe I would tell my 12-year-old self to seek and ask questions. Yeah. And when you ask those questions, don't impulsively react. Like, stand and be impressed into the unknown. Yeah. Because there's knowledge in the unknown. Yeah. And faith is part of the unknown. So, yeah, that's probably what I would tell her.
Yeah. I like that. I guess I will answer this one. So I would tell 12 was, I don't know. Some people love 12. I've only met one person. It's that person from our Bible study. She's the only person I've ever known in my life that loved like that middle school age. Like middle school is just kind of crazy. But I would probably tell her there's enough space for all of you. Like I always felt like my presence or personality was too much or too big, and I had the great blessing of a mother that allowed me to ask a lot of questions, even when other adults did not like that. She allowed me to ask questions always. It was gonna be her way in the end, right? Like that. We're still from a Southern church family, so it was her way in the end. But she always let me ask questions. But I never felt comfortable in that outside of that space, and so I would tell her there's enough room. Right? Even if you don't see a lot of women doing it, there's enough room for you to be full. And I wish I knew that sooner. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I would say that. But yeah, thank you guys. I think this is important. I feel like what I want to do is be able to spark these conversations. I feel like women have the best conversations. I don't know. And if you're not having them, find that one girlfriend that you can have these conversations with. Find that one younger woman that, even if she's just 5-10 years younger, somebody, a cousin, a niece, that you can have these conversations with, because I feel like the only way to break the habits that are bad, the habits that are toxic, the habits that don't help us in our faith, are to talk about it. And I think a lot of things happen when we're not having these conversations. So my encouragement is, you see this little quick conversation that we have and it sparks some conversation. Call somebody, text somebody, ask them, how was it for you growing up? Did you talk about these things? Did you feel like there was space for you to kind of live fully? Because my dream is that every girl that is walking in faith, that is walking as a believer, would see herself fully and would live that out fully. And the only way that can happen is if we are kind of making space for that. So thank you guys for kind of hanging out with us. I know this is a different together than we usually have, a different set of clips that we usually have, but we hope that you continue to support the women in your life, continue to pray and lift up the women in your life, encourage the women in your life. If you haven't this month, get on YouTube and find a woman that's preaching and support her. Google women preaching and support them. Donate to their ministries, whatever you need to do. Donate to a female-owned business. There are countless ones on Instagram, Facebook. Do something to support a woman in your life, or a woman that has some sort of platform that she's trying to build her family or herself. All right. So thank you guys so much. Make sure you connect with us on our socials at capacity.church on Instagram or Facebook, and you can also join us on our website at www.capacity.church. We have some exciting things coming up. Our first in-person worship night is happening 5/15. So we want to see you there. It's going to be at Rocketown. It's going to be amazing. And so we hope to see you if you are in Nashville to come and support. You get to see these beautiful faces, these powerful women that are out here killing it. So thank you guys. All right, everybody have a good one.
Let the king of my heart be the mountain where I run, the fountain I drink from. Oh, he is my song. Let the king of my heart be the shadow where I hide. the ransom for my life. Oh, he is my song. And you are good, good. Oh, 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 let the King of my heart be the wind beneath my sails, the anchor in the waves. Oh, he is my song. Let the King of my heart be the fire in my veins, the echo of my days. Oh, he is my song. And you are good, good. Oh, you are good, good. Oh, and you are good, good. You are good, good. Oh, let the King of my heart be the wind beneath my sails, the anchor in the waves. Oh, he is my song. Let the King of my heart be the fire within my veins, the anchor in the waves. Oh, he is my song. And you are good, good. Oh, 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 you are good, good. Oh. You're never gonna let me down. 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 You are good, good. Oh, you are good, good. Oh, Let the king of my heart be the mountain where I run, the fountain I drink from. Oh, you are my song. Let the king of my heart be the shadow where I hide, the ransom for my life. Oh, he is my song, and you are good, good.